Well, hello, Rossier. To Dean Gallagher, the Board of Counselors, faculty, staff, and especially the graduates, it is an honor to join you on this special day. And let me start on behalf of the Senate by thanking USC, because in an era of attacks on the free press, the rise in fake news, and it seems attacks on truth itself, you have given a platform to the gold standard of journalism in our time, America's anchorman, Ron Burgundy. For those who've seen the movie, I tested that joke on my daughters, and 60% of the time it worked every time. Increasingly, I find that Americans pursue one set of concerns, their families, their businesses, their communities, while Washington pursues another. That is especially true for education, which seldom earns attention in our politics or media. Just consider how many questions K-12 education received during last year's presidential debates. The answer is 0. That is unfortunate because if we examine what Americans truly value, education ranks at the top. Education leads families to move to neighborhoods they can't afford for a decent school for their kids. It makes bleary-eyed parents rise before dawn to pack their kids' bag, then fight exhaustion to read with them before bed. And it led many of you to mortgage your future to pay for your degree. Your sacrifice is even more noteworthy because you have dedicated your education to the education of others. And before I say anything else, I'd like the crowd to thank me in thanking all of you for making that noble and necessary choice. Today, I want to focus you on a choice that none of us made. One of the enduring truths of being a human being is that we don't get to choose our parents. We don't choose to be born to a home of wealth or poverty, or a home that values books and learning, or one which for whatever reason does not. That is, as Dina said, the lottery of life. And yet in America, that lottery's outcome almost always determines educational outcomes. Let's consider what conditions we've tolerated in this country for a child born through no fault of her own into poverty in our country, the richest, most innovative, and most powerful in history. By age 4, a girl born into poverty will hear 30 million fewer words than her more affluent peers. When she's older, what's the likelihood her neighborhood school will meet her needs? How about a school a mile away, or even 5 miles away? Not high in many of America's cities or rural communities. When she reaches the 4th grade, her chances of being a proficient reader are 1 in 5. Earning a college degree, 1 in 10. Would any of us accept those odds for our children? Would any senator or cable pundit accept those odds for theirs? Of course not. But the truth is that for generations, we have treated America's children in poverty like they were someone else's. And so the question is, what is our obligation as a nation to remedy the burden of bad luck for millions of children? At a minimum, I believe it means we have a moral duty to assure that less fortunate kids have educational opportunities to fulfill their God-given potential. Thank you. What would the education debate look like if we really fulfilled this duty? if we treated the country's children as our own. Surely we would provide every child access to early childhood education from age 0 to age 5. We'd ensure that every child could attend a high-performing school from kindergarten to 12th grade. We'd enable every young person to pursue higher education without bankrupting her family. And if these goals seem obvious, even unimaginative to many senators, that's because many of us take them for granted for our own children. But for children living in poverty, these goals are as out of reach in our country today as flying to the moon. Rossier, we need to put these goals in reach and treat America's children as our own. That means that starts with rejecting the notion that poverty and a bad education are inseparable, that children in urban school districts should expect another 20 years like the last 20 years, that we can't break down what's wrong with our schools and what's right so that all our kids at long last have what they are due as Americans. I know change is possible. We see it in my hometown of Denver. There we envisioned a future where every child had a great school in her neighborhood. We asked high school students, whom so many had counted out, to meet the highest graduation requirements in the state. And while none of us, least of all me, is satisfied with the outcomes today, more of Denver's kids make progress every year. Compared to a decade ago, 62% more kids graduated this year, with a 120% increase in Latino graduates. At the same time, dropouts fell 60%. Successful AP exams tripled. 67% more students enrolled in college this year than 10 years ago, and Denver posted the second fastest academic growth in the country for any district with over 25,000 students. And despite that progress, no one is satisfied. No one is content. We still have an infuriating achievement gap, and too many of our kids still face persistent structural barriers to a quality education. The good news for all of you is that schools are human institutions. They can change if we summon the will and the imagination. And we must, because across America, we need to change profoundly how we educate our kids. Let's start by rejecting the notion that an education system designed deep in the last century or even the century before that can deliver for 21st century kids. A century ago, discrimination forced working women to become either nurses or teachers and stay in that profession for life. Thankfully, the world has evolved, but our system of recruiting, developing, and retaining teachers has not. We are in a new landscape where talented women have endless options, but also where technology has transformed how we use information and the skills kids need for good jobs. And with inequality reaching levels in this country that we have not seen since 1928, modernizing education becomes even more vital. And we need to start by fostering a society that fully values teaching as America's engine of opportunity. There is no job harder in America than teaching in a high-poverty school. My colleagues may not realize it, but it is certainly harder than serving in the United States Senate. More than anyone else in our country, our teachers will define the potential of our prosperity. So we need to reward teachers for serving in high needs areas and delivering results for their kids. Let's value them as resources for kids, but also for each other and the broader community. Let's offer teachers diverse career options beyond simply repeating the same thing year after year or abandoning their passion to work in administration. These outdated incentives produce not just a market failure, but a moral failure for our country. That's why today in Denver, you will find teachers teaching peers and being paid for it, joining colleagues as co-instructors and helping students with targeted interventions. At our best, a school in Denver is a place not just for children to learn, but for teachers to come perfect their craft as teachers. For our kids to attain a 21st century education, teaching must become a 21st century profession, supported, respected, and revered. I know it's easy to speak about these things. I know it's easy to call for them in speeches, but changing the incentives, transforming the systems, that is hard. Believe me, I'm still recovering the sleep I lost as superintendent, and this president's tweets are not helping. Not helping at all. Fixing a system that has been broken for decades can prove frustrating in a culture hungry for instant results, and many people I've known have given up. Others blame broader forces affecting student learning like healthcare and housing and lower expectations for what schools and classrooms can do. All of you, as future educators, administrators, counselors, will wade into this. And I'm sorry to break it to you, but almost nothing about it is going to be easy. Because your job is not to keep things the same, for that is no better than to accept the cruel results we see for our kids. Your job is to make change, to transform our schools, to lead the debate in this country, and that means revolutionizing the craft of teaching by trying new methods and questioning how things are done, questioning things you were taught in this place. And by the way, that will help all kids, even kids in affluent neighborhoods, regardless of their family's income. It may not always make you popular, but you need to persevere. Because as hard as it may get for you, the kids have it harder. And I know that some of you have sat in those chairs, have sat in those seats, so you know how hard it can be. I've met kids who wake up at 5:30 in the morning and take 3 buses, which they shouldn't have to do in this country, so they can attend a better school across town, who squeeze homework in between midnight shifts at a fast food restaurant to help their families pay the rent, who poured their heart into schoolwork only to learn in the 9th grade that college is not for them because of an immigration status they didn't even know they had. They have it hard. We have a responsibility to ease their burden and to brighten their future. For in that work lies not only their future, but the future of our entire country. Especially now when sacred institutions of this country have come under attack, when the truth itself feels besieged. We turn to teachers to ensure our youngest Americans appreciate our oldest values, to preserve the American spirit that drew Lena's parents here from Egypt and Syria 40 years ago, to sort out fake news from fact, to help students place today's prejudice in the arc of our broader progress, and to appreciate their power as citizens to push us ever forward. We ask all of that of you today and tomorrow. And it's also right that you should ask all of us, your fellow Americans, to strive for an economy that better supports our middle class and those striving for it, reforms the criminal justice system to better serve our communities, fixes broken immigration laws to keep families together, and expands health care and nutrition so kids come to school only hungry to learn. You are right to expect that of us, and we should deliver that to you. For all Americans need to come to understand in this century that the fate of our democracy lies in your classrooms, that the crisscrossing paths of our children will weave America's future, and that your work provides our greatest chance to fulfill the founders' great hope that out of many we would become one. Thank you, Rossier. Congratulations to the graduates and to your families. Good luck. Good luck.